Around 2008, the band was already touring throughout the world with a classic lineup from Hardwork and from Necroticism, with Mike Emmett from Arch Enemy, and Bill and Jeff doing their traditional roles, of course. And these tours were very successful. They played for thousands and thousands of people, many more than they played in the 90s actually. They played in Brazil for a packed sold out gig. They played in Hellfest, a big festival, and other big festivals for thousands and thousands of people. So there was this surge of emotions around Carcass. There was this commotion around the band because they were playing their classics live again after so many years. And finally the band decided to do a new album, Surgical Steel. And this year the album was finally released on Nuclear Blast. And that's what we gotta look at to see if the album lives up to the expectations of 17 years without any new Carcass music. Now, Michael Emmett, he never really did participate in much of the recording of Carcass music. He's a very good guitar player, an excellent guitar player, and he took the Carcass sound to Arch Enemy, his own band. I particularly like the first two Arch Enemy albums. The first two albums are really good, and they follow the tradition of Hardwork. And he kind of contacted the band for this one, but they decided that his priority was Arch Enemy, so he's not present. So the album really is a product of Bill Steer, Daniel, the drummer, and Jeff, the bass player. I mean, the core of Carcass is Jeff and Bill, really. And the album does live to the expectations. It's a great album. It's a very, very good Carcass album. It's a mix of everything they have done in the past, and it's really, really well done. It opens with a very beautiful melodic track called 9085, which is a great adaptation of a jokey kind of riff they did in a demo in 1985. That demo was released later as a bootleg named Power of Blood. And in following that beautiful only guitar only melodic intro, your ears are brutalized by the track Thrasher's Abattoir, which has less than 2 minutes, but it arrives destroying everything. The production of Colin Richardson is very tight, very good, very well done. And the vocals of Jeff Walker, he said he had the most time to record the vocals this time, to really focus on it, and with new technology as well, like with Pro Tools help. He could record different tracks of vocals and so forth. So that worked really nicely. The band financed this album themselves, by the way, which I think is important. They recorded the album with money from their own pocket, and then they sold the album to the label that offered them the best deal. And I think that's a clever strategy. I mean, they had complete control in the studio to do whatever they wanted. And this is really a sum of the predecessors. I mean, you have melodic death metal tracks. You have the gore, grind riffs of the earlier albums of Symphonies of Sickness. But you also have the rock, 70s rock kind of influences that were very present in Swan Song, and that Bill Steer is bringing, obviously, from Firebird. I mean, some bands, in my opinion, they focus on only one of these things. So you have the gore grind bands, which are horrible bands in general, like very boring grindcore. They just do blast, 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 just blast beats all the time. It's just a wall of boring noise. And some bands try to focus only on the brutal parts, so you have the brutal death metal bands like Deeds of Flesh and Disgorge and so on. And it's almost like everything is percussion on these bands. There's no groove, there's no expectation built by the riff. The riffs are almost soulless, in my opinion. And Carcass manages to combine everything and add more to it. I mean, they have the 70s influence, they have the perfect blast beats, the aggression of the blast beats that the gore grind bands can't have, and they also have the 70s groove. He's really good. I mean, at no point you think that the riffs are gonna be crap. At no point you think that Bill is playing the first riff that came to his mind. He really took care to compose creative, interesting riffs that are unpredictable as one can be within this genre at this point. The playing in the album is brilliant. I mean, these guys have matured a lot in their playing. I mean, they were already good over 20 years ago when they were recording Necroticism, but the instrumentation is really, really good. The drumming of Daniel, he's a really young drummer, but already very proficient, very technical, like an octopus playing, really. Really good drumming, drum patterns that follow the tracks brilliantly. And one of the things that I like the most about Carcass and Bill's riffs is that the riffing for the blast beats is not generic at all. I mean, he writes riffs which fit perfectly with the blast beat. They are not generic like Agathocles or whatever riffs. They are riffs which are built to be fitted with that blast beat. And Daniel really delivers with tight fucking playing, really, really good, precise beats all the time, very varied, and it's the best you're gonna find in terms of melodic death metal combined with blasting passages that make perfect sense and are glued together by the mid-paced riding your horse parts. So Carcass is competing with a lot of work, a lot of artwork out there. All these famous bands, Death, Carcass, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, Pestilence, and so on, they have released really good albums. And so they are competing with a wealth of work, of artwork, of death metal, a legacy that they helped create, which is really difficult to fight up against. So you cannot recapture the freshness of that moment of inventing the genre, but they did their best within the parameters of the genre. So one of the best tracks, some of the best tracks in this album come to mind. Cadaver Pouch Converter System, very good track. It starts with very melodic kind of riffs, and they are completely reminiscent of Hardwork. Non-compliance to ASTM. Kind of a generic riff we have here, actually, not that catchy, but it has a very good solo in the middle, which is followed again by a slow part, which is very, very nice, and a very good melodic solo. I mean, the solos in Bill Steer's hands are probably his apex, and I didn't see a solo as good as that since Necroticism. Unfit for Human Consumption is a track which is a bit more rocker in certain riffs, but it still is a very good track and gives the flavor of variation of this album. Now, this is an album that it's not risking almost anything. The band wanted to do a safe death metal album within all of these parameters that they set. Unfit for Human Consumption has excellent blast beats, and the combination of the fucking rifferama that Bill Steer does is very good, very appropriate, perfect for the blast. It's exactly the example of perfect blast beat riff that I was talking about. Closing the album, we have the excellent Mount of Execution, which is kind of an odd song for this album. It's different from the others. It starts with beautiful acoustic, melodic guitar playing, and it's followed by the sensual riff, this groovier, kind of very beautiful one, which serves as a basis for an almost a progressive moment, a progressive part. And it's a very, very long track. It's about 6 minutes long, even a little bit more, in terms of death metal or grindcore even. But it stands out as a different type of composition. It almost doesn't fit with the rest of the album, but in my opinion, it's one of the best. of this album. And I think that if they follow that, if they decide to compose more stuff like that, and more stuff which is challenging to the genre if they record another album, it's gonna be a good way to go, because this track stands out as a beautiful, melodic, interesting end. Okay, many of the death metal bands of the 90s either broke up or decided to come back making death metal again. Pestilence, Morgoth, Entombed, Gorefest, the list goes on. I mean, bands that reformed, Pungent Stench, decided to come back doing death metal because that's what they realize is what they invented and is what they have to give to the world. But Carcass, with their return 17 years after setting their foot in the studio, they did something different here. Carcass is above probably all of the ones that I just mentioned. And it's very clear with this album that if they want, if they keep recording, they still have a lot to add to the death metal they helped invent.